Welcome to Coffee Talks with Mubin. My name is Mubin Qureshi. The purpose of this podcast is to interview people from a variety of different backgrounds and to see whatever wisdom that they can share with us. My first guest today is KJ Hardrick. He is a graduate of MIT, entrepreneur, YouTuber, and a pretty damn good basketball player as well. KJ, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
So, obviously you have a following and people know your backstory, but for those of us who don't know your story, can you share how you got to where you are now, as briefly as possible? We'll get into more detail about it later, but
okay, yeah. I guess I've always been interested in engineering growing up, and so that became a very early goal of mine to get into good engineering school. Ended up getting into MIT. Thought I wanted to continue school at Stanford, stopped that because of a lot of different opportunities that came up, mostly in the startup space. And yeah, here I am today, continuing to work as an engineer.
What was your experience like at MIT?
It's a little mixed. I think going in, I had a lot of people around me trying to warn me about how difficult it would be. But I think that shaped my perspective enough where I was actually underwhelmed by how difficult everything, because everyone was saying, hey, that's tough. It's going to be, world's hardest school that you can attend.
Right.
But setting that sort of expectation in my head, and I've always been someone that worked hard, and then my high school was actually a very academic driven high school. It was always number 1 or 3 in California.
Oh, so you're from California, that's right. That's right.
Okay. And so that, I think, coupled with the expectations, made me go in already expecting a certain level, and so I knew I had to work really hard from the get-go, and I think everything else just played out.
So were you stressed at MIT, or did you feel overwhelmed ever, or no?
I think in the beginning, I had put pressure on myself to achieve, and coming from, to give a little bit more backstory, from high school, there were, say, 86% Asian. I mixed mostly black, some Asian in there, and being the different one at the school was always something where they were okay with me being as athletic as I was, but then when I was doing better academically, it was what's going on? Or even just being on par with a lot of them, because all of them they'd have special tutors, academies, or whatever, but I'm just playing basketball. I'm going to volleyball, I'm going to track after school. Okay. I almost just work.
Yeah. So you never really fit in, you could only fit in a specific role, it sounded like, when you were either was athletics but not academics.
Yeah, and even some teachers are like, oh, you're applying to MIT,
wow.
Are you sure? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And then I think questions like that just lit a fire, okay.
Yeah.
So at MIT, I actually wanted to go to MIT, and I wanted to study aerospace engineering specifically because I was like, okay, this is going to be the hardest major at the hardest school, and if I succeed at this, what is anyone ever going to say to me? And so that was first underlying motivation to kind of paint the picture.
So to shut people up.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing you correctly, the motivational force behind it is just people who doubted you, even in, because I've watched some of your videos obviously, and one of the things that you would talk about is that some people doubted you even getting into a program like MIT, you were again, the same thing in high school, you were too athletic and that's why you were at MIT.
Yeah, people would say, so did they give you an athletic scholarship?
Yeah.
Did the coaches get you in? Stuff like that, where it didn't make sense to them that the academics alone would have been warranted.
How was that for you?
It was tough because our school, the high school, we get people from 7th grade, so it was a 7 through 12.
Okay.
So I'll even have random 7th graders sitting in the hallway, be like, oh, that's him. Because at the time I was...
And how old were you when they would point you out?
At this point I was a senior.
Damn.
Because before then, I actually had no idea. I think with everyone around me, I'd see everybody's test scores. Everybody, they're kind of looking at each other, see where they stand. And I had done research at UCLA the year before, and then I was love this campus. I thought that that's where I was going to go. Then from there, I got into an MIT fly-in program, which in hindsight, when I looked it up, like after I got in, it was like, okay, they are only accepting people that they think are likely to
Go to MIT.
like be admitted if they were to apply later. But I had remembered at the time I had just filled out the form. I didn't think it was a serious application. I was just putting in my information, sent it over, didn't think anything of it. But I guess once I did that, it opened my eyes a little bit more. And my high school counselor actually pulled me out of class one day, beginning of senior year, and was like, do you want to go to some of these schools? Because I think you have a shot. And I think it was at that point where I started changing my perspective, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot for the Ivy Leagues, I'm going to shoot for MIT, I'm going to shoot for Stanford.
Did you feel like you fit in?
I think it's tough because at school, all the reinforcement that I was getting was negative. It felt like
Both in high school. It sounds like both in high school and college. Or it sounds like.
Yeah, I can, because I've always been in a scenario where, I'm not, where I don't consider myself the smartest person in the room. So then there's always these people that maybe they're more vocal about what they've learned or something like that.
By the way, I think that's crap, but
bring everything down. But yeah, and it just started so early. I think in high school I didn't get into, say, Algebra 1 in 7th grade, and that sets my trajectory up. And so now I'm not taking the most advanced math, and then because of that, they're like, you're not qualified for an MIT or something.
Like that's because like I would wonder, not having that support. Imagine, and you made it this far. I wonder what it would have been like, how different it would have been had you had that support. It sounds like, and again, you should check out his YouTube channel. It's pretty dope. But you interviewed your parents, and it sounds like they were pretty supportive in your ambitions, like with whatever it is that you wanted to do. Did that like counter the lack of support you were getting academically, you'd say?
Yeah, I think my parents did as good of a job as I'd ever expect anyone to do, and so it's always like grateful for them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they just didn't fully understand. I think from my point of view, it was just, I'm supporting my son, mm-hmm. and so if he wants to go to these places, of course we can like support him to go to these places. Yeah. But I thought it was just parents being parents and saying you had a chance, and so I don't think that like directly counteracted enough. But at the same time I will say that it's not a regret. That I don't regret that I didn't have as much support or stuff like that, because I think that fuel pushed me enough. But I guess we can talk later about how I think that shifted, and then I'm more relaxed now and stuff like that.
How did you take care of yourself during all of that?
I think sports has just always been my go-to outlet. And so even with, say, basketball, after basketball season, there's always traveling that we have to do for, say, travel teams. And then I also joined volleyball, and then I was also on track. So I was part of all these sports, and that just kept me busy all year long.
What was that like in college? And were you doing like, did you play intramural, I'm assuming?
So in college, it gets back to another like high school thing where my coach for basketball, your
high school coach?
Yes, my high school coach. He actually pulled me out of volleyball sophomore year to join track because he knows a track coach, and he wants me to keep the diligent level of training even outside of basketball, and he didn't want me to relax in volleyball. Right. And at the same time never really allowed me to do any of the robotics or math Olympiads or science Olympiads, like stuff like that. And so when it became to MIT, even with the sports accolades that I had, I was like, and going back to the motivations and everything, like I almost felt like it would be a cop-out if I did say I want to play on that team.
Damn.
Because it felt like, I felt like I was going to make that team. Yeah. But at the same time, everyone's just going to be like, there it is. And then also, I want to be able to, say, do whatever I want at MIT and not be like tied down to the athletics programs, which I was getting feedback from, and they said that it was giving similar vibes to my high school coach, where you have to be really focused on basketball and only that.
And it would take away from the academics naturally, because like the demands of a college. What division is it?
It's Division 3.
Division 3, but even then, like it's still pretty rigorous in terms of practice, traveling, games, and all that, right? Okay. What did you graduate from MIT, and then what did you do after, like career-wise for post-graduation?
Yeah, so I ended up studying aerospace engineering. My grandfather actually worked for Rockwell and Boeing, like that.
Nice.
That was kind of like a company there. But never really had formal training. My dad also was a technician at some point. And so like it always interested me. And then going back to our point about just taking the hardest major, everyone was steering me away from aerospace, so I'm like, I'll do it.
There's like this intrinsic of like, because I remember we were playing basketball one time, one of the first few times we played, and I told someone who was guarding him, like, he goes right. And then like, I guess I could tell that bothered you. And then you're like, I do go right. And then, but then like, we were much cool, like, it was much calmer after that. But it sounds like you get really, like, when people say you can't do something, you're like, watch what I'm about to do.
Yeah, like in that situation, I'll probably go left for the next 10 times just to try to score on you over
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Luckily I wasn't guarding you then. But what, so it led you to your degree, and then what did you do after your degree?
Yeah, so there was a couple things that happened that started shaping things. The first internship that I got was after my freshman year at Northrop Grumman, big aerospace company based in Redondo Beach, California. And that one was a software engineering internship. But that was another instance where I finished that intern project maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks.
How long was the internship? The whole summer?
8 weeks and 10 weeks, I don't know.
Of course. Of course.
And so they didn't have anything. They were like, okay, you can continue. And at this time, of course, there's no remote. So I'm clocking in. We'll give you something if it comes up. I'm like doing things on the side. And at this point, I was really into consumer tech. So ended up starting the YouTube channel with that internship money. And then I had time during the day because I didn't have much to do at work. And then that's how YouTube channel started.
So how old were you when you started? So sophomore year, you said?
Yeah, this was 2017.
So then you were 19, 20?
Yeah.
Nice. And then so you literally started the channel because you were bored at your internship.
Yeah.
Am I hearing that right?
And I've always been interested in consumer tech, and I told all the guys in the office, what new iPhones to get or what new watches to get. And I saw Marquez Brown, I can do that.
So then you were doing YouTube after your internship. Then what did you do after you graduated? Like you had a couple startups during college, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly.
At the very end, yeah. So I guess to give you a little bit more perspective on that timeline, that was 2017. Mm-hmm. I actually felt unused, like not utilized at Northrop Grumman. Okay. So I ended up escalating that all the way to the VP of hiring. We had a one-on-one lunch.
A 20-year-old.
And then he basically said, look at all the job descriptions, and for next summer, give us another chance, pick one, and you can have it. And so I ended up doing the next summer systems dynamics test engineering. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do something more hands-on so I can actually do something. Right. Got to touch the James Webb Space Telescope, got to work on some cool stuff. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it was pushing me. And then I felt like I can do the people's jobs that were already there, like engineer threes. But at the same time, it felt like they had to be there for 10 years just to kind of get to that position. And so to circumvent all of that, that's where grad school started to become more appealing. I'm like, maybe I'll do grad school. Stanford was definitely my one and only choice. It's the only program that I applied to seriously. And at this point, I was a different, confident person. So I'm like,
where did the confidence come from? Like, I obviously, like, having the audacity as a 20-year-old intern to go all the way to the VP of the company. Not saying that you shouldn't have done that, but you have to be very confident to do that. Where does that come from?
I think after the first year of MIT, throughout the whole first year, that motivation from high school was still there about people doubting me. Mm-hmm. And I think I ended up getting pretty much all A's that whole year. And that was even during a time where MIT offers you pass, no record. So if you don't do well, it's just a pass. Like you can get a C, you pass the class, and if you get an F, it'll just disappear. It won't ever show up. But even then, I was like, I can't use that as a crutch, and so I'm going to do well. And then I secured that internship right off the bat, where first years, a lot of the time, they may have to do research, or they just take actual summer break. But I wanted that real paying job right away. And I think after that, and then doing the internship project.
So like your accomplishments.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I belong here.
That's pretty good. And then walk us through the startups then. So you started your YouTube during your internship, and then what
So we get into end of 2019. That's the beginning of my senior year. I applied to Stanford. I just had finished doing research at Stanford the summer before.
Right.
Went well, met a lot of cool people, a lot of the higher ups at Stanford. I had a pretty good idea that if I applied, they were going to let me in. And so I applied early, got in, say, January. Around that time...
That's when COVID, right?
COVID was like March.
Oh, but COVID was
but it was
about
to come.
Right.
But at this point, I had already vlogged for a little bit, maybe a year and a half, when I had transitioned to more just personal life stuff on my YouTube channel. And one of the ex-founders of Napster, John Fanning, actually reached out because he wanted to talk to me. He wanted to start an autonomous drone company, and he saw that I was an aerospace engineering student, and I guess liked me enough. We went to Tate one day in January.
A local restaurant chain in Boston, in the East Coast, by the way, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, that's pretty. And then, so have you already gotten into Stanford at the time when you had this meeting?
I might not have. I think so.
It was right around that time.
I got in.
So what was that like to have like the guy from Napster reach out, one of the co-founders of Napster reach out to you? And
yeah, it was a big deal for me at the time.
Sure.
But then at the same time, I had enough connections at MIT where like I cross-checked him like so much. Like I was able to go to, at MIT there's like a Martin Trust Center that deals with entrepreneurs and people like that. And so I was able to, like, once he gave me a contract to join this team, get lawyers to look at it, make sure things looked right. And then once they were like, oh, this is a plain Jane contract, I ended up signing on, initial bit of equity. And I guess that's what led into March when we got kicked off campus. They just saw it as an opportunity to be like, okay, let's get you to Alabama, let's get you on the ground working.
Wow.
And so I started working while I was finishing up my degree because now it's fully remote.
Okay, so then you graduate, still at the startup, go to Stanford. I'm assuming campus is still locked down.
Yeah, completely locked down. Everything I'm attending is on Zoom. At this point, YouTube was doing well. I was working at the startup, so I was getting paid a full-time salary. And I was, I guess, starting school.
Right.
But then I was paying like whole tuition. There was full tuition at Stanford, even if I'm just on Zoom with everyone. All the facilities are closed. So I guess going back to our like sports outlet, I didn't have any of that. And so I ended up buying a whole like indoor gym. I ended up going on.
You were one of the few. You couldn't find those things at all.
Because I was like, I need this. And then that kind of led into the end of 2020.
So then I'm assuming like you have like, hey, I have the success here. I'm not really enjoying my time at Stanford because of all of the restrictions and everything. But also like I'm successful. Like, do I really need that degree while I have this going on?
Yeah.
So is that what led to it, or?
So at the same time that this happened, this is called Deuce Drone. It's a autonomous drone company. John Fanning had reached out to me. He wanted to start an AI company. He was like, okay, AI's getting big.
You noticed this back then?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so like I want you, like, do you know anyone in AI? And so it turned out at school, at the fraternity I lived in, which is Nu Delta, we had a graduate resident advisor that lived in our house. And we actually shared a wall. His name is Curtis, who's now CEO of Clean Lab in San Francisco, post Series A. But we were like good friends. And I introduced him to John Fanning. And he also brought in someone from Harvard to be the CEO. And so they started a company that I was supposed to be part of the board of, and just kind of
You're 22?
Yeah. And so that actually formed in, say, July. But then I told them, hey, I'm working on Deuce Drone, that's my baby. Like, that's what I'm working on. But then it came closer to December, Stanford's on winter break. They had a pitch coming up. They're like, hey, we need some help with our demo. And so I jump in there, code something up for their demo. Demo goes well, they get funding. Then the CEO sits me down, like, how serious are you with continuing Stanford? And so this was actually another startup taking the place of Stanford, and not like me going to a drone company, because I thought I could handle the drone, YouTube, and Stanford, no problem. But it's like you enter a third entity, then I want to.
You have to cut something out.
Yeah.
Damn. Were you scared when you made that decision to drop? Like, so once you got this offer, you're like, okay, if I take this offer, I can't do Stanford. That's a really, we talk about being confident. That's requires a lot of confidence, but requires a lot of courage too to make a decision like that.
Yeah, I think I've known Curtis for so long that, so for more context, he was just about to finish his PhD at MIT. And he worked on initial Alexa, Google, like all of those AI bots that you talk to back in the day, like he's worked on those projects. And so I'm like, okay, this guy's accomplished, I believe, in what he's doing. And then also when I was coding on these initial AI models back then, okay, this is really cool. This is even before ChatGPT and all these things.
Crazy.
And so I think it's that intrigue, and then at the same time, I'm getting 2 full-time salaries now. And so it's like instead of paying for Stanford full, I'm getting 2.
Getting money. You're basically getting what you would hope to get graduating from Stanford right now. So what's the point? Do you regret?
No, I think at the time my mom was actually the one that was more like sad.
Yeah.
Just like, you could have been like a Stanford PhD, MIT bachelor's, you know, because it was also for both a master's and PhD.
Right.
And but my dad was like, go for the opportunity.
So you leave Stanford. The startups you have 2 startups, YouTube. That's a lot.
Yeah, it was still a lot of stuff to do. And at this point, we're saying beginning of 2021. And that went all the way up until March
March of
2021.
Okay.
To give you context about my girlfriend who lives here now, works at Moderna, at that time, we had just been long distance because of COVID. We got kicked off campus, and then we went to like our separate ways. I went to Alabama to start working on a startup. At this point, I was just getting fed up with just being in Palo Alto with nothing open, because California was
even more restricted, especially in San Francisco. It was even more than California, I think. Right?
And so I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
You had to walk out with a mask.
Yeah, I remember.
And so I think at this point, I was like, I need to get away. She had started her first job at Johnson & Johnson, which was close to the Philly area. It's like Trenton, New Jersey. So we wanted to live in Philly. So I moved to Philly. I actually I was trying to break my lease, but I didn't care if the lease broke. So I was still paying full rent in Palo Alto and move over to Philly. Yeah. But the day that I get there, when we're waiting in a hotel to get the keys to the place, that's when I got diagnosed with my diseases. And I think it was because of everything that was going on there.
You're at the top of the top, essentially. Like, I left Stanford. I'm part of 2 startups. I have a YouTube channel that's really successful.
Yeah, this one I just got my YouTube play button too.
Oh, damn.
So the 100,000 subscribers.
What happened? Like, health-wise? And again, don't have to go full detail if you don't want to, but whatever you're willing to share.
And I've talked about it full on my channel, but to give the basic rundown, I show up, I'm in Philly. First, I noticed that like my watch isn't fitting properly. And for someone that's been, I guess like in sports, really fit my whole life, it's like, I'm never puffy. Like, what is this? Ended up sleeping on it like a couple nights. Because usually something nothing, I never get sick. So I'm just, okay, I'll sleep on it. Until like there was one night where my foot was just so swollen, but I didn't sprain anything, nothing happened, it doesn't hurt. And then the doctors in my life started like...
Your friends?
Yeah, so I told my mom, one of my aunts, which is my mom's sister, is a doctor in the Philippines. And so she like forwards over the picture. And then I remember that morning they were just like, you need to go to the emergency room.
Damn. How old were you at this time? 23?
This was probably before my 23rd birthday, because I'm in June.
Yeah, so then you go, how long are you, so you go to the ER, you get diagnosed with?
So there's 2 diseases, minimal change disease and IgA nephropathy. The tough thing about both of them is they're not diagnosable by test, so they had to test everything else and kind of rule out everything. And they told me it most likely in like obese older women, and they were like, "You're neither of those." So
because you're still working out at the time, playing basketball.
Maybe the week before, I was doing pro runs in California with my younger brother, and it was going well. And so, like on my Instagram, you'd probably see me at those courts. And then we get to this point. Then I'm in the hospital like close to a month. Like every day, they're just running every test that they can on me. End up getting a kidney biopsy a couple weeks in, and that's where they realize like the diseases that are there. For context, I went from like 205 pounds up to 270 in the hospital. Like I was gaining like 10, 15 pounds a day.
How long of a span was that?
2 to 3 weeks.
Wow.
In the beginning, I was gaining 10 pounds a day, just from myself leaking into myself, and that's what the doctors
The kidneys were
explained to me.
failing. The kidneys were failing.
Yeah, so the kidneys aren't filtering anymore,
Yeah,
and so all the water is just like swelling up inside of me. And it wasn't until I guess like week 2, then I'm just not allowed to eat or drink really, so that they can keep the weight under control, so I won't drown myself.
So when I met you, I think you were just coming out of all of that, right? So this was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So you're talking, that was like a good 2 years of, and you document a lot of this on your channel. So if you guys want to get the full story, I would recommend it. It's pretty tough to watch because like you could see the pain on your face about like what that was like for you.
Because I think the medication, so it's prednisone, like high doses of prednisone is like 10 milligrams. Yeah. They had to get it up to 80 just for me to stop swelling so much. And because it's such a high impact drug, they have to wane you off of it over time. So that's why it took almost a year just to get from 80 milligrams a day to all the way off. Mm-hmm. So nothing drastic happens to me. But then the side effects are like a ton, right? Like it's tough because it's causing, or it's fixing swelling like at the functional level, but it's causing weight gain because it ruins my metabolism. It like takes away, or like makes me a lot more stressed all the time. And so I felt like my mind was going away too. And so then that's where I felt like I was at my lowest because I couldn't handle everything that I was doing mentally. And then I didn't have any outlets because I wasn't allowed to do anything physically. And then my face was inflating so that I didn't even feel comfortable going in front of the cameras either.
You strike me as someone that likes to do, like, I want to be on top of, like, I can do, like, if I set my mind to it, I'll do it. And then you pretty much were told in a span of a week or 2 weeks or a month that you couldn't. That's so frustrating. Like, I just feel like, you would feel so helpless, I would assume.
Yeah. And that was probably the worst part of it, just the helpless feeling. Like, especially when you go to, say, family gatherings that they haven't seen you in a while, they look at you. People are like automatically going to assume, that it's just weight gain or it's people just like, I'm not working out as much, maybe I'm eating bad or things like that. But then it's just so much to explain.
Because like I'm Pakistani, and since I moved out to Boston, I've gained some weight too. And I'm trying to lose it, but whenever I go back home, you have all the elders. Oh, you've gained so much weight. Yeah. What's happened? Like, and you're gaining. You're always skinny. Then you gain. How much weight did you gain total? With that?
It went up to 285, so 80 pounds.
80 pounds.
Yeah, and that was all within like months.
And they had no idea did they know you were going through the health issues, or did they not know?
Like the closer ones did. But I remember in August that year, like it was my dad's 70th. And so I went back to California, and then like, this is the most relatives I've seen, like outside of a wedding or something like that. And like, that's when they're going to see me. And so that hit me hard because I always like putting myself in the best light possible.
Sure.
But now I'm like, and my face looks like abnormally large. My body looks really large. That was tough.
So then you had to wait for the medication to do its pack, then go wean off the medication, I'm assuming. And then what did that do to your perspective about like work and life and things like that? Because I'm assuming you're still working at this time, or are you not working? So. And
that was also the tough part. That's why I call it, the very rock bottom, because at the startups, I'm a 1099 contractor.
Oh, so you don't get to work.
So now I'm not logging any hours either. So there was no health benefits, everything's just out of pocket. All the medical bills that you can imagine just got crazy. And I'm no income. And then my other income, which would have been YouTube, I can't put myself on camera. I couldn't. Yeah. So that's all three of them. All just disappeared. 3 incomes to nothing.
How'd you keep going?
I don't know. I guess it's part of the scenario, right, where we talk about like if you can't do it, you just got to do it. And so like even if they're like you're gonna have to do these things or you're not gonna survive, like I'll do those things. Like as long as there's a chance, I'll turn it around as quickly as possible.
Where does this resilience come from?
I'm not sure. I think it's one of those things that I've just always had. Maybe it's like older sibling, like from very early on, you say my parents would be going through something. Felt like I was always in a state where I'm willing to talk about it, like walk things through, or like my dad didn't go to college and my mom did, but it was in the Philippines, so she didn't understand anything, like the process here. And so any of that, I just had to figure out. And so it was just a thing of like, I know it's just on me to figure out, so I didn't rely on anybody to do it.
So you're just like, okay, if there's a will, there's a way. So was it like one step at a time? Or was it like, okay, this is my goal that I'm gonna do, like, because you had no career then, essentially, at this point, so.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I've built enough connections where they know, like, half capacity KJ, I'll still hire.
Yeah.
And so, like, they were still willing to, give what they could. And it's like, basically, maybe I log in a couple times a day and they'll still pay me. At some point, like, I'm just coding now, like, less meetings I'm a part of. But I will say, like, I got back into my swing of things maybe a month or two in, and swing of things just having some sort of routine of actually working. Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually logging hours now. Maybe it's not the capacity where I'm posting on YouTube and I'm doing, like, hopping on pitch calls and whatever, but I'm working in some capacity where I felt justified enough to actually log an hour.
So where are you now? So you go through what you went through, you start slowly, through your contacts, you slowly start getting back into the workforce. And then just literally over a period of time, you grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, so 2021 was a lot. By the middle of 2021, that was actually when I let John Fanning know that, like, I can't do Strone anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I actually liked this new company, the one that started with the Curtis, who
the AI
PhD, and I was really enjoying that. But then at the same time, I saw everything that happened, and I don't want to do that again. So, like, the 3 things that I'm doing, I'm bringing that down to 2. Mm-hmm. And so I told him about that. Didn't go the smoothest, especially because it's this new company that I'm working with, and that just kind of bled in. I think that's helped support my, like, recovery. At this point, my capacity increased a little bit more. I was being more involved in that company. I got a raise. They were giving me, like, travel benefits to come to and from Boston every month whenever I wanted to. And I think that headspace and that freedom allowed me to kind of ease back into things.
Because I feel like what I'm hearing is that, like, there's always something going on in your mind, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. Whether it's whatever business you're working on, YouTube, or finding ways to do more. When do you slow down? That's my question. Because, like, I wonder, because obviously, like, you talk about playing sports and things like that, but, like, mentally, is that the only time you slow down, or is there any other times you really do slow down?
Yeah, sports is definitely a big one, and I think it bangs, like, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone in my head. This is how I explain it. I get the exercise, of course, but because of that competitiveness that I have, that kicks it into another gear and kind of lets off whatever extra steam's there. And so that's one thing. Okay. I also am now allowing myself to say, like, my friends, they always play, like, Fortnite. Mm-hmm. And they'll hop on a call and they'll play. I'm allowing myself to do that more often now. Before, I'd be like, that's a waste of time. I can do so much in those, like, hours playing. But now I'm like, I need another mindless activity where I'm just connecting with people.
Did you feel like you were connecting with people before the health issues, or did you feel like, because I would imagine that things slowed down. You talk about things slowing down. Did that change the way you interacted with people and whatnot?
Yeah, I think before then, like, the confidence was going up the roof, right? And there were so many opportunities, and, like, it was nothing against my friends or my loved ones, but I knew that they really just couldn't keep up, like, with what I was doing. It wasn't even worth explaining everything at any point. I just wanted to keep going.
And you were gunning.
Yeah.
You were gunning.
But then, of course, after getting sick, I'm like, okay, I need these people to, like, just support me.
So you slowed down.
Yep.
And so you're a lot. So before it was like it's not even worth the time to invest myself into this, but now what is the difference between that and now?
I think now, say like I even have a full-time editor, right? I think that was a lot of my time taken up editing YouTube videos. Now I'm just focusing on the things that I'm best at, and I'm willing to outsource, even though say an editor might not be as good as me, or like have what's in my head. That I'm willing to relinquish some of that
control.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think the more control we have, the better off we are, but it's just the more control we have, the more stress we have.
Yeah.
Right. So, how do you feel letting go of that control?
Yeah, I think it's been a tough process, but I think because it's also with the background of coming back from the sickness, I'm just more willing. That's why even some days, most days, say we're playing basketball, even when I'm really competitive, I'll just let it go. Yeah. Like I'll walk away most of the time. Right. Like it's not even worth it.
So you leave a startup, obviously it doesn't go too well when you leave. Where are you at now?
So that startup that I was talking about worked there until 2022 in June, July, where I rose the ranks. Like I got promoted a couple times.
Of course you did.
I was there at pitch competitions, met with VCs and everything. And even one point the CEO got sick and I was interim CEO at that company.
And how old are you now?
24. And at that point,
by the way, you're putting you have a minority parents, and I do as well. You're putting every minority kid to shame right now with everything you're talking about, which is great. I'm not trying to dissuade discard what you're saying, but damn. Okay, so you're 23, 24, interim CEO,
and this is where John and I had some of our final battles, right? Where I now knew a lot of the people that we were onboarding and wanted to keep them happy. And I saw the tea leaves on the wall, but I thought I would convince him, and we talked, which I tried to talk so many times. But because my family invested, I even personally invested, I was like, okay, I believe in this so much, I'll buy shares of the company, even on top of my compensation. And yeah, just blink of an eye, it was done.
And this is post-sickness?
Post-sickness is hard to...
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. In your recovery of...
At this point, I'm off prednisone, but there's still these effects that I feel on a day-to-day basis.
What was that like, investing so much in this company and then, again, another setback?
Yeah, and so now we're down to just YouTube, right? And so, I had already done with Distro, and I was already done with ChipBrain at this point, and it was what do I want to do? Right now, it felt the biggest thing that I felt I lost was the intrinsic respect that I had from that whole community, the team, the investors, and everything like that. They believed in me so much that they were okay, you're the CEO. But now I'm I've got to prove myself to the world again. I think that's the feeling that I had. If I put myself out in the job market, entry-level Google engineer, will that feel good? Entry-level, engineer here, and nothing take away from those jobs, but coming from what I was doing on a day-to-day basis.
When you get the taste of doing your own thing, it's really intoxicating and it's hard to leave. So I definitely get what you're saying. Absolutely.
And so from there, I actually spent 2 months, right, just trying to figure out what do I want to do here. So I started cranking up YouTube videos a little bit more, but then that started feeling bad because I started feeling it was a job, and anything I put my mind to, I wanted it to just be up here. So now I was doing it for the numbers, and I felt guilty because I was this is never why I did it.
The intention changes.
Yeah, and so now it doesn't feel good anymore posting, and so that stopped. I tried day trading because I'm smart enough to do this, but still it's that's just a little bit of time in the day, right? And I'm also being risky. What if I want to have a wedding at some point and do these things, and eventually that led to where I am today, though. At the company that I work at, there was some random LinkedIn post from a connection. They were hiring some senior client engineer, and in my head, I'm okay, so software engineer, but I get to still interact with clients. I get to have some say in how this product is built. And I applied there, reached out. It turns out the VP of people over there was a mechanical engineer at MIT. And so it's a similar like, okay, aerospace, mechanical, but then this is a software AI company. We chatted. By next week, I had an offer, and then I liked the team, and so I joined. And at this point, there were like 80 people at that company, and so I felt like it wouldn't be the pressure that I had felt when there was
like being one of
the first 10,
yeah.
and growing that up. And so now I'm like, okay, maybe I can have a taste of the startup, still have some say in what things go on, but I'm not getting called in the middle of the night to fix something.
So it was like another, again, so we talk about the progression, like you're cutting out the access, you're refocusing on what you want, and then it kind of gives you it gives you the perspective of like, okay, this seems more appealing to me. Like you put dip your toe in various entities, like you talk about, and then now you're here.
Yeah.
So it sounds like when you saw it, like that's what you knew that's what you wanted when you got an idea of what the company was like.
And it wasn't really too much about like the specific job or the industry or anything. I met enough people there where I'm like, okay, I can have these people believe in me. Like they have enough of an open mind to do that, and then that's all I needed.
And you have the work ethic and intellect to figure it out.
Because it was for a more senior engineer. They recognized that, hey, I don't have the years of experience, but they were like, we'll reevaluate you in 3 months because we're coming up to another reevaluation period. And I was like, as long as that happens, I'll sign. And of course, in 3 months, I got the promotion and the raise. But I needed that door open and have them open-minded enough to like give me that chance to get there.
Okay, so I keep like wondering after I hear all of this, like after all the things that you've accomplished and everything that you've been through, right? Like, how do you keep going? That's like, because you could have easily just been like, you know what? I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna ride one thing. I'm gonna keep doing that. But no, you're like, because this is not like, we're gonna get into some of the side projects that you're doing in addition to all of this with your mentorship and your college program that you're trying to launch. But like, how do you keep going?
I think this one like that, this opportunity that I just described, is my give me the headspace to do what I want to do. Because like 9 to 5, I've always used like every waking hour of my day, leading up to this, even at MIT, and that's where I did the YouTube channel, was my editor. I went to events, and for this one, I get to, somewhere between 5 and 6, go play basketball and not worry about anything, right? So this was my period. That was also, like, this is why the whole job was appealing, where I get to go in, have less pressure on me. They pay the bills. As long as they're open-minded with, okay, give me what I'm valued at. Like, I got the 2 or 3 raises within that first calendar year.
Yeah.
Now I'm comfortable. I have the headspace and now the finances to kind of pursue the different things that I want to.
Because like even in my experience, like sometimes I feel like, because I come from a more, like my career is more non-traditional from people from where, like my ethnic background, like we're doctors or lawyers. But one of the things I felt is that you give me the time and the space and I'll figure it out. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing from you right now. Is like, I need that time and that space where I have money coming in, but I still have the opportunity to do things that I like, and then I'll see what I'm about to do.
And there's another wrinkle to this, right? Where when that company's ended, I had those 2 months. My girlfriend, like right now, she actually paid the rent for 2 months consecutively, like with her salary completely. And so now there's also part of me that's like, I have to make sure that she's also comfortable and taken care of. And so I can't, that's when I was thinking about, like the day trading or the other, like even YouTube. It's so variable that I can't, present that and have her feel comfortable during that time. And so this whole job also gave me that stability, paying like checks coming in, and it's good enough for we can enjoy the things that we want to, but then also gave me the headspace to keep pursuing other things.
You slowed down.
Yeah, a lot. Which still like, I'm still me, but it's
but
still slowed down.
But like your definition of slow down is like another definition of hustling. Another definition of hustling, I feel like. So, what about the program? So now you're doing your day job, but then you're launching other programs. Can you tell us quickly about these programs, and then I have some questions about that afterwards.
Yeah, so there's two that are kind of tangential. One of them is a mentorship program where I felt like I wish I had someone to just tell me, give me the proper path, right? I almost had to go pave the way. But now in hindsight, there's definitely like certain things that I could have done to kind of put me in those positions. And it actually was a connection that I met at Equinox, and he ended up bringing me onto his program, being my sales coach, and kind of walk me through things like that, on how I can even package this and deliver it. And then as soon as I packaged it, people wanted to sign up, wanted to talk to me. So I had to figure out pricing and everything. But now, I have a decent amount of mentees that I enjoy talking to. I just talked to one before I came here, where I get to help them in whatever stage in life. Sometimes they're high school trying to go to college. Sometimes they're in college but don't know what to do with whatever degree. Sometimes they're post-college and maybe they want to do a career pivot. Like, how do we even navigate that? And because I had experience doing all those things, they really value, I guess, what I have to say there. So that's the mentorship program. And then
What's that called?
Aspire Mentors.
Aspire Mentors, okay.
And so there's more information on aspirementors.tech.
Yeah, and then obviously I'll post a link in the description, so if anybody is interested in the mentorship program, we'll provide a link to it and whatnot. So,
Yeah.
So then that's one side hustle. What's the other thing you're doing?
Well, with the high school planning course, so that's highschoolplanning.com, we wanted a way to package that in a more digestible offering. I recognize that the mentorship itself, that's a very expensive, high ticket, because you're accessing me, we're talking on a daily basis, but wanted something that's just okay, quick, surefire way, I'll brain dump what I know about getting into these colleges, because I went to MIT, but I also got into Harvard, Princeton, Columbia, pretty much everywhere that I applied to.
Again, putting that repositioning right now.
Yeah, so that's a more packaged offering where people can sign up, work at their own pace, and do things like that.
So let's talk about the college experience in terms of perceptions of things, right? Because I deal with, in my job as a therapist, I deal with kids that are, entering college or in college. And some of the things that I've noticed, or even in general, in dealing with some of the youth nowadays, is that it's this mindset, I have to be at MIT, I have to be at Harvard. What do you say to those individuals? That the only way I'll be successful is if I go to MIT or Harvard?
I think it's the reason why the college application process is so stringent. They get so much information out of you because there has to be a good fit in both directions. Mm-hmm. Say you are a certain level academically. I've seen it firsthand. They go to a place like MIT. If their high school wasn't even rigorous enough to prepare you for that, they drown instantly. And you get to a point where you're failing tests, you're failing everything. You can't do your homework assignments in time. Now you're just a failing college student. It doesn't matter where you are. You're a failing college student. So it's tough. It's tough to get any opportunities outside of that. And so I kind of caution people, don't try to go somewhere where it might be too daunting. But at the same time, there's these places that would probably accept you because they feel okay, we can offer you value, you can offer us value. They only accept you if they feel you'll be an alum who can speak about the university in the future, right, do some successful things. So I wouldn't discount some of these other universities that accept you, mm-hmm, because they're accepting you because they feel they can put you in a position to succeed.
Do I need to go to a school like MIT, Stanford, Harvard to be successful?
For something like that, a question like that is a little nuanced.
Let's talk about it. So we'll define success.
Okay.
So success meaning I can provide for my family, live a comfortable life, travel where I want to travel. Do I need to have those schools to be successful?
Yeah, to that I would say definitely not. Mm-hmm. Right. It's if from everything we talked about today, I was I went to insert any college. Say UCLA was my previous dream school. Mm-hmm. It didn't discount anything else that I said throughout the rest of this. I think what happens at these prestigious universities is that if you succeed on top of there, sure, right? And I think it added me a lot, like it added a lot of pressure to my life that I wouldn't really even like wish on my younger brother, where like I had to keep, like I'm in classrooms where everybody wants to be the best. And so that type of pressure is tough. It's tough to succeed in. And then I don't know how many people can actually take that and can make it constructive and push their lives forward instead of bringing themselves down and be like, okay, I don't belong. So that's like one aspect. But then the other aspect is just like, again, having the confidence. I think that's the big overwhelming thing, right? You can go to another school and it's all still up to you. You can use all their resources because a lot of these schools, they have a ton of resources. They're still like expensive schools because they have all of these resources.
And connection.
And so you have, if you utilize their alumni network, I'm sure there's countless people from whatever, pick any school, how successful they are, like billionaires or starting their own companies. As long as you put yourself in the right situations, you succeed in terms of like studying and talking to people, like as people, I think you can progress anywhere.
There's also the concept of dealing with, I apply to these schools and I don't get in. And now like I'm a failure. What do you say to those kids?
I think again, it's just so, it's tough. Like you need that mutual fit. Like first of all, not failure. Like I think it should be pointed that out. Like I should point that out first, like not failure. Because it's like what you make of it, like of whatever situation anyway, right? You can get in and not succeed.
Right.
And so like that, it doesn't guarantee anything, right? And at the same time, say like, for example, I got into Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Columbia. I got waitlisted from UC Berkeley. Sometimes things happen. And like, even just using that as an example, I know everybody would say the first schools that I mentioned are better, but sometimes it's just not the right fit, and things happen. And so like in a case like that, in isolation, I can look at the UC Berkeley rejection as failure, but so many other things came up.
Because like when we come full circle now, like you went to one of the most prestigious universities in the world, you took one of the most difficult programs in the world, and not to like summarize your life, but you hit, like even you accomplish the highs of the highs, you still win through the lows of the lows. So I feel like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because it doesn't matter where you go, you're still going to go through challenges in life, and it's the how you respond to those challenges that truly define what makes your life.
And it's like, say you're getting prepared to, I felt like, say MIT, everybody's like, okay, did you have to learn those like literal rocket science to be successful, right? I don't use any rocket algorithms now or whatever. But I think it's like learning how to learn at the capacity that you're able to learn at, and like how to apply those and actually talk things through. Because again, like I talk about people who I've seen firsthand that MIT is just too much. But then we get into some dark timelines where they just don't like themselves anymore, like their value goes way low, and they're at the top of the top school, but they feel like they're at the bottom of the top, so they just feel like bottom because that's the only experience that they have.
Right, because you see everyone else around you succeeding and you're not.
And so it could even hit like multiples of factors of like how that affects you because you're only around successful.
What would you say the state of the mental health support at these universities, at these institutions, what would you say to that?
I think a lot of it I think is reactive, which makes it tough. So when people are already going through issues, sometimes it's too far gone. Whereas like, say for example, we've had a couple students in our grade, like one committed suicide, one died, and they have to make a statement about it because everyone knows, and so they have to tell people, and it'll be like, okay, we have all these offerings or whatever. I feel like they're doing better because of now this new generation is more open talking about things like that. And like personally, I've even used some of their facilities, and I was able to talk to a therapist my senior year when I was going through some of these things, like these challenges, people doubting me, like I was able to talk things like that through. But at the same time, it also took someone, I would I would have called myself strong in that moment for actually using those resources. Because there's one thing of like having the resources there, but it's like making people comfortable enough to actually come and show up. And I think that second part is still the most lacking part.
Right, like we talk about courage, right? Because like that's the definition of courage. Because people think courage is the absence of fear, but courage is the ability to act despite having that fear, right? And I'm happy that you were able to do that, but it also sounds like you only, like the universities are only reactive, they're not proactive enough where they need to be, if I'm hearing that correctly. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, because it's tough. You get all these different classes taking tests, and there's all these assignments. It's easy to drown.
Yeah.
At MIT, they even have the phrase like it's learning by fire hose because it's coming at you so fast, and you just have to almost survive. And so for a lot of people, say one thing happens in their life, even full power octane, full mental energy, it's tough. Yeah. And so when anything happens, they can kind of fall off really fast.
Okay, so last question. I'm in these universities, or I'm at some point in life where I graduate universities and I'm struggling. And I'm just not succeeding at the rate I thought I would, or I've succeeded and I'm not happy. What do you say to those individuals?
I think there's a lot more opportunities out there than people realize. I think one of the issues with just the way, I guess, Americans do education, it's almost you have to decide what you're trying to do when you're 17 applying to these colleges and then kind of follow that track. And I'll say that there's a lot of things that you can do to bring value. And I think initially everyone's always like, follow your passion, but a lot of the times like it's not gonna pay the bills, and at the same time you might spiral lower and lower because of that. So it's like find what you can provide, how you can provide value to the world, and how that intersects with the amount you'll get compensated. Get yourself in a comfortable position first. Then we can start talking about like, okay, different things that we can strategize, like what jobs would be fitting for you, what organizations can support you. But I think there needs to be a base level of comfort, and I think that's where a lot of these problems come at. They're uncomfortable, they graduate, they're like, oh shoot, I need to find something, and then they kind of spiral and spiral and spiral, and you need to like get those small wins and stack them up.
So slow down.
Yeah.
Gain stability and move forward. So thank you, KJ, for coming on today. You provided a lot of information, and I think a lot of us myself included, have benefited from that, so I appreciate what you had to share. For those of you watching, make sure to check out, and again, I'll provide links in the description below, aspirementor.tech and highschoolmentors.com. Thank you for watching. That concludes today's episode. Thank you for watching today's video. Please make sure to like and subscribe and share any comments below. Hope to see you in the next video.